Well, I like ice. And, I particularly like glaciers. So I got into glaciology a long time ago. Was walking, climbing on ice was great. That will be interesting to know the physics of those things. And I think a lot of my work has been on glaciers in all the parks around Alaska, well, but not glaciers, and even some down south in Washington and places. And it's been in national parks. And I've always thought as national parks is very bureaucratic and very hard to get work permits and things. It's just an outsider. Well, it's great working with park people. They're really great people. They're interested in what's going on, and I think that's made the work really interesting and easy to do. So, and one thing I was going to say is I like Denali and I like Central Alaska. There's some big glaciers, some of the biggest in the world, temperate glaciers. And I don't like Montana glaciers because they're going to go away. And I don't know what Glacier Park's going to be called, because it's Glacier Park. They're going away. If the climate stays the same, even they'll go away. Anyway. Okay, so there's some neat things I'm going to talk about glaciers, like how they surge or why they surge, some earthquakes that affect the glaciers, and tidewater glaciers. And that's where the first part of my talk will go. And then I'll talk about measurements of glaciers, how they change, and how it's related to climate and sea level. So surging glaciers. This is actually a Gannett Glacier just outside of Mount Deborah stuff. And this is a glacier that surged not too long ago, and you can still see remnants of it surging. And so what's a surge? Well, the glacier sort of hangs out for a while, it just moves at maybe 10 or 50 meters a year, maybe 100 meters a year. And then all of a sudden, after 10 or somewhere 10 to 50 or 60 years, it decides to really speed up. And when it speeds up, it goes to may go 50 meters a day, sometimes even 100 meters a day. And you can hear it, and you can see it just with your eyes. And they're really spectacular. And so it's quasi-periodic. It means for a while it's just pretty calm, normal speed, and then it has a surge, and it's usually they last 1 or 2 years. And then, the geometry really changes, and I'll show you some of that in a second. But one thing that's really interesting is we found that surging glaciers, when glaciers surge, is not really related to climate, except in terms of when the snowfall isn't so much or that kind of thing. It stretches the period out. They still, once they surge, it's not related to climate at all. Okay, so when a surge begins, up in the upper regions of the glacier, there's a drawdown. It's like a bathtub. Think of a bathtub that's full of water, and you lift one end up. So up above, it shrinks. And in this case, it's about 100 meters, which is pretty tall. Then it breaks up in the middle, gets really turbulent. These are crevasses and just these ice pillars. And the crevasses on a normal glacier are maybe 30 meters deep. These can be up to 80 meters or so. So big cracks in the ice. And then when you get down low on the glacier, it sort of inflates. So this is the side of the glacier where it used to be, near the valley wall. Well, this is the inflation part of the glacier. So it went up this guy here and it got that thick. So it's really changed a lot. And this is actually, it moves down the glacier, it keeps getting thicker and thicker down the glacier. And it's huge. Sometimes this is going to be like 60 meters or more. And this is a surging glacier, the Peters Glacier, just next to Mulder, next to Glacier down in Mulder. And it surged some time ago, but this is a surge front. And this actually, that's where it was, and it actually moved forward down the glacier And then when the surge stops, it stops in like a day or two. And then there's a huge rush of water at it. And that's pretty exciting, unless you have instruments right in front of you. Okay, now this is Variegated Glacier, which is right down in Hubbard Glacier in the St. Elias. And this surged many times. This happened to be pictures here on 64 and 65. And you can see that the glacier here, oops, glacier here is sort of rough here, and it's got a little low here, but it's not too much. The next year, it surged up here. There was a lot of drawdown here, comes down here, and here's the terminus. It's so broken up, and it actually activated the terminus and made all sorts of ice features right in front of it and disturbed the moraine. So this was in 1 year, made that change. And it's actually surged many times. And recently, in 1995, it had a surge, and I don't know if there's been any since, but sometimes they're really strong like this one, sometimes they're little things. But the reason it's called variegated is there's these really cool colors of the moraines out front. There's red and green and white, and it's because when they surge from different sides, how far they get down, they make different colored moraines. Okay, well this is Muldrow Glacier, and that's probably the most seen glacier in the park. And it surged in 1956, and you can see, this is an old surge moraine. This is the newest surge moraine. So it surged once before, now it surged down to here. And it surged, it dropped down way up near the Trilika and the upper part of the Muldrow, surged down here, and this is all basically activated moraine. It used to be just flat moraine material, and that rose up and got all cracked up like this. Now, when it'll surge again, I don't know. We always hope it'll do it again. Okay, here's a unique glacier that surged around Mount Huntington. And Guyadina was working on this, and then I came and looked at things. And so it advanced. I mean, the surge started up. Let's see it now. But it started up in a side valley somewhere here, maybe here. And it came down from here. It wasn't a real strong surge, but it came down to here, and sort of all this was broken up. One thing I find interesting is the glaciers up by Mount Huntington weren't part of the surge. And I think it's something about Huntington is granite. And out here, I don't think this is all granite. And sometimes, or very seldom, do you see a surging glacier in granite, not granite. So maybe that's what it is. Usually they're ones with really crummy rock that can be deformed easily. Okay, and here's just a surge quite recently on the, what's the road? The other road, that's the parks, but Bridges, yeah. Right next to the road, you can see this. This is a surge in the McGinnis Glacier, which is a small glacier, but it just happened, it activated the whole glacier. Okay, and so in terms of surges, there's, in the Alaska Range, there were time periods when it didn't surge much, and time periods when there were a lot of surges. And also in the 80s, there were some good surges too. Now in St. Elias Park, the surges seem to occur in periods too, different surges. There's a surge period for a lot of glaciers. And one thing about surges is they don't seem to be related to climate. They just sort of do it when they want to. And it might be somewhat determining the period between surges, but that just because you get a lot of snowfall one year, they're not going to surge, things like that. Well, in here, Black Rapids, we don't know when it's going to surge. It's surged in 1936 or something, and it should surge by now. And why it's not surging, well, we don't know. You really need it for digging. Okay, then another thing to talk about is the effects of earthquakes on glaciers. This is a big landslide that happened 2 years ago or something, when the earthquake, came right up the fall. The fall goes right through Black Rapids Glacier. big landslides, and that's going to affect the thickness changes and everything on the glacier and sort of how that will affect waves of ice coming in. Okay, the next part I'm going to talk about is tidewater glaciers. And tidewater glaciers, most tidewater glaciers in Alaska are retreating. Some are advancing. And they have, again, have a mind of their own. It's not like, oh, the climate changed this much, so the glacier's going to advance or retreat. There's some relation to climate when they start, but the glacier that is advancing moves really slowly. When the glacier retreats, it goes very fast in retreat. And that's something related to the dynamics of the surge and sea level and stuff. Well, now this glacier, this is Hubbard Glacier down by Yakutat, and this is, oops, this is Russell Fjord, and this is Yakutat Bay. And you see that it came down and it actually clogged a channel here. And then that channel, oh, and so then the lake, what used to be Russell Fjord, now rose, I don't know how far, but quite a bit, and it almost overflowed into Yakutat, which has a big, Seatuck River and stuff has a big fishing industry on it. So, okay, so and then what happened is that when the water got so high, there was a big outbreak. And it was huge. It was, look at these numbers here. It was huge kinds of numbers of water coming out there. Not for long, but very, very quickly. And I mean, a lot of flow out of there. And the thing is about that, some people in Yakutat say, well, that's a natural thing. Older native people said, okay, this occurs. But younger people, or I don't know, the more fishermen, commercial fishermen people said, oh, I don't want to do it. Oh, okay, so another thing I want to talk about quickly is glacier changes and climate-related glacier changes. And this became a big thing all around the world, it seemed. So we fly a little airplane down the glacier with a laser altimeter in it, and we GPS that's accurate to about 5 centimeters or so. And sometimes it doesn't look so good. You get stuck up on top of a glacier. Okay, so here's the different regions of glaciers that we. So anyway, glaciers thin, and when they're thinning because of climate change, usually they low down quite a bit, up above not very much. This is glacier here. Well, so looking at all the glaciers around Alaska, basically, especially the Alaska range, you can see that these are huge changes, meters per year. And a glacier, especially like Columbia or something, is really shrinking. And so here's ones around Alaska, different parks and things. And you can see that by this graph, Alaska is adding more water to the sea level than any other place in the world, except they claim that Greenland was, in 1 year, was adding the most water. Now, I don't know, because we haven't looked at our 2005 6 days, so we don't want to know. Okay, so here's some stuff that basically Alaskan glaciers are sensitive to the climate, and they're actually they're adding more water to sea level than any other thing except thermal expansions of water,